Good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the today's episode of Daily News Analysis of NEXT IAS. Let's have a look into the important topics of the day which we are going to discuss. The first is regarding the Prime Minister's proposed visit to Manipur, important from GS3 internal security challenges in border areas and their management perspective. Second is with respect to the particularly vulnerable tribal groups and demand by Ministry of Tribal Affairs for their separate enumeration in upcoming census, important from GS2 welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections. The third is with respect to the new Immigration and Foreigners Act 2025, important from GS2, issues related to the union and state legislature, their structure, functioning. And the next one is with respect to the antibiotics and their correlation with mental health in India, important from GS2, issues related to the social sector including health and education. And the last one, the decoded topic which you are going to discuss is with reference to the teachers in the changing world, important from GS2, issues related to the social sector including education. So let's start with the today's episode. Prime Minister's proposed visit to the Manipur. So what is the backdrop of this particular news? Ahead of the Prime Minister's likely visit to Manipur, Centre claims that Kuki civil society groups agreed to follow the free movement in Manipur. So it's a major breakthrough when it comes to the impasse that has been caused by the blocking of the National Highway 2 by the civil society organizations claimed to be representative of the Kuki organization. What is the relevance? GS3, security challenges and their management in the border areas, linkages of organized crime with terrorism. So let's go into the detail of the news. So basically, days ahead of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's likely visit to the Manipur, Central government on Thursday claimed that Kuki civil society groups had agreed to allow the free movement in Manipur. Basically, Central also announced signing of new suspension of operation agreements with Kuki militant groups under which they would relocate their camps from near the meaty areas and agreed to protect the territorial integrity of the Manipur. So basically, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is planning to visit Manipur on 13th of September. And in the context of this particular visit, central government has announced that Kuki civil society groups, basically Kuki is a tribe in the Manipur which basically resides in the hilly areas. And central also announced new suspension of operation agreement with Kuki militant groups. So basically, when it comes to the insurgency and militancy in the northeast, Manipur is the state with at least 25 different militant groups, many of which are being dominated by the Kuki community. And in the context of ethnic conflict between the Meeti and Kuki tribes, this particular suspension of operation agreement was signed by central government, basically by Ministry of Home Affairs with Kuki militant groups. And what are the different conditions agreed under this suspension of operation agreement? We are going to discuss it. So, what is the centre's announcement? That centre claimed Kuki civil society groups agreed to follow free movement in the Manipur. So, basically what was happening in case of Manipur, that the National Highway 2 which connects Manipur with rest of the country, that goes to the area dominated by the Kuki tribal communities. And in order to protect their interest, so far the Kuki community was blocking the movement of the people as well as the essential goods by this highway. So recently there was an agreement signed between Ministry of Home Affairs and this Kuki civil society organizations which allowed the free movement between the by this particular National Highway 2. And also new suspension of operation agreement was signed with Kuki militant groups like Kuki National Organization or United People Fronts. Basically it's these are nothing but the various Kuki militant organizations. The pact includes, what are the different conditions under this pact? Relocation of the militant groups away from the meaty areas. So basically there have been certain Kuki militant groups camps which were located in the meaty areas. Those will be relocated away from the meaty areas, and agreement to respect the Manipur's territorial integrity. So this is significance in the context of demand. Earlier there was a demand by various Kuki militant organization that within Manipur there should be a separate administrative zone for the Kuki dominated areas, which was staunchly opposed by the state government as well as the Meaty organizations. So let's have a look into the what is suspension of operation agreement. So basically it's a kind of formal pact between the government and any militant or underground groups. So what is the objective of this suspension of operation agreement? To temporarily halt the military and armed activities. So whatever the military or armed activities that have been going on since last 2 years, that will be halted by the militant organizations like KNO or UPF, and these agreements are basically typically used to facilitate the peace talks or create the conducive atmosphere for the peace talks, prelude to the former peace negotiation by creating the ceasefire and establishing the ground rules how the period of non-conflict will be managed. So basically these suspension of operation agreements are basically signed between government and any militant organization to create the conducive atmosphere for the formal talks that will lead to the any concrete agreement between the center as well as the militant group. So what are the terms that that have been of the suspension of operation agreement that has been signed between center as well as Kuki organization? The first and foremost, it is effective, immediately effective, and duration will be 1 year. Respect to Manipur's territorial integrity, which includes rejecting the demand for separate zone of administration by Kuki groups. So this particular demand has been steadfastly opposed by the central as well as the state government and categorically rejected by the Ministry of Home Affairs during these talks. Relocation of the 7 designated camps away from the conflict prone zones. So basically there are certain zones which are highly sensitive and conflict prone, which were housing the camps, militant camps of the Kuki groups, and those will be relocated from the border areas or buffer zones to the Kuki dominated areas now. The cadres of these Kuki National Organization or United People Fronts, those militant organization which are a part of suspension of agreement, they will deposit their arms and ammunition with the nearest CRPF or BSF camps, that is paramilitary forces. The cadre verification of the militant groups. So basically these Kuki militant organization, these Kuki groups have lot of ethnic similarities or ethnic relations with Myanmar. So many of the cadres of these particular Kuki groups belong to the Myanmar. So there will be a cadre verification to delist the cadres which belong to the Myanmar. Then proper ID verification for the cadre, so that if any kind of allowance has to be given to them, that will be properly given in accordance with the rule. Movement of the cadres outside the camp must be informed to the local police. So basically if there is any movement, those cadres which are the part of these militant organization, they will be confined to those designated camps, and if they want to go outside those camps, the local police will be informed in advance. Joint monitoring group to enforce the rules that have been decided by this suspension of agreement, and if there is any kind of violation by either side, there will be review of the suspension of operation agreement. So these are the prominent terms and conditions of this suspension of operation agreement between center and Kuki groups. So let's go into this particular pre-movement issue. So basically Ministry of Home Affairs has said that this Kuki Zoo Council has decided to open national highway to Imphal Dimapur highway for commuters and essential goods. So basically this let's go into the map now. So basically this particular national highway 2, it roughly this is the diagram, or this is the actual way of the national highway 2, and basically this Senapati district or this is Konglipoik district, these are Kuki dominated, whereas this Imphal West and Imphal East, this is the valley area which is dominated by the Meeti tribe. So basically what is the case, that earlier this particular national highway 2, which connects the rest of the country with Manipur, that was being choked by the Kuki civil society organization or by Kuki militant organizations. So again now this particular NH2 will be opened by the Kuki civil society organization. Now what is the Kuki clarification given by the Kuki Zonal Council, Kuki Zoo Council? Basically National Highway 02, that is National Highway 2 was never closed, and so there is no question of reopening. This particular appeal of opening of the highway will apply to Kangpokoi district stretch which is not across the buffer zones, Basically, this appeal of opening of this highway, National Highway 2, applies to only one district, that is Kampokoi, and this is not applicable to the buffer zone. So, this particular Kuki Zoo Council has also stressed that buffer zones must remain intact and guarded. So, what do we mean by this buffer zone? Basically, this refers to the area between Miti inhabited and Kuki Zoo dominant parts which are heavily manned by the security forces to keep the peace. So, these are the areas which are exactly between the Kuki dominated areas and Miti dominated areas, thus they are sensitive and dominated by both sides. Ensuring the security of this highway is the responsibility of the central government and not the local civilians. So, this is the clarification given by the Kuki Zoo Council. Now, what is the response to this particular suspension of operation agreement by other Zoo groups? Basically, Zoo is a group of tribes under which Kuki is one of the tribe, and there are other councils or there are other militant organization of these Zoo tribes, one of which is Zomi Council, which is based in Churachandpur. So, this particular organization has categorically rejected Kuki Zonal Council's role in the Kuki Zoo Council's role in the maintenance of the peace, and it had said that this KZC, Kuki Zoo Council, is a new group which has started in 2023 and not a legitimate community representative of the Zoo tribes. Also, it accused Ministry of Home Affairs of playing the divide and rule tactics. Now, let us have a look into the security concerns with respect to the suspension of operation agreement. So, what is the issue basically? Although this particular suspension of operation agreement has been signed between the Ministry of Home Affairs and Kuki militant organization, there has been certain issues or security concerns. The first and foremost, this National Highway 2 stretch in Kangpok P district is highly sensitive, and when there was one attempt by the security forces to open this particular stretch of National Highway 2, which was met with very high level of violence by the Kuki groups. Also, Kuki Zonal Council urged Ministry of Home Affairs to deploy the central forces for commuter safety on those highways. Now, let us have a look into the stand of the third party, that is the United Naga Council stand. This basically United Naga Council is a apex body of all the Nagas living in the Manipur. So, basically when it comes to Manipur, this particular valley part is dominated by the Miti people. So, basically Mitis are Hindus who follow Vaishnavism, and this particular border district which are bordering Mizoram as well as the Tripura, these are dominated by the Zoo tribes like Kuki or other Zoo tribes. And when it comes to the northeastern part of the Manipur, basically this is dominated by the various Naga tribes, and these Naga tribes basically they have their one apex body which is called as the United Naga Council. So, basically what is the stand of this United Naga Council? Basically what they are saying, they have declared that they will impose a trade embargo from the September 8, 2025 against the suspension of free movement regime with Myanmar and border fencing. So, basically this Zoo tribe as well as various Naga tribes live across the border, means they are there in the India also, and they are there in the Myanmar also. So, there from the post independence period there was a free movement regime between the India and Myanmar. Earlier this particular free movement regime was applicable up to the 40 km. Later on this was reduced to 16 km. And in February 2023, what the central government has announced, that there will be a construction of the border fencing along the India-Myanmar border, which is almost 1643 kilometers. So, this proposal was staunchly opposed by the Naga tribes as well as the Zoo tribes, and still it has not been materialized yet. Now, let us have a look into this particular free movement regime. Basically, it is a bilateral arrangement between India and Myanmar, allowing unrestricted movement within the 16 km of either side of the 1643 km of Indo-Myanmar border. So, basically this is a bilateral arrangement, and what is the eligibility? Basically it applies to only hill tribes of the India-Myanmar border, not to the valley people, whether they are Indian citizen or Myanmar citizen. It requires the border pass to that particular member of the tribe, which is valid for the 1 year, and they can stay up to the 2 weeks per visit. So basically, what were the objectives when this particular pre-movement regime that was started? Preserving the historical, cultural and social ties between the border tribal communities, promotion of the local trade and enabling the family visits, and act as a model for the cross-border cooperation under the India's earlier Lookist policy, now Actist policy. So basically, although the objectives very benign or noble objectives were there, this particular provision was badly, severely misused by the militant organizations or insurgents for the drug trafficking or human trafficking, arms trafficking across the border. As a result of which, Ministry of Home Affairs in February 2023 had declared to create the fencing along the entire stretch of 1643 kilometers of Myanmar border. So this proposal has not been materialized yet because of the fact that there was a staunch opposition from the Naga tribes as well as the Zhou tribes across the Indo-Myanmar border. Now we have come across the suspension of operation agreement between central government, that is the Ministry of Home Affairs, as well as the Kuki militant organization. But at the same time, so Ministry of Home Affairs is also trying to create the suspension of operation agreement or ceasefire agreements with other valley-based groups like United Nationals Liberation Front. This is the MITI militant group after the peace deal in 2023. So basically, with this particular United National Liberation Front, which is the MITI valley-based and MITI communities militant organization, it has signed a peace deal with the central government in 2023. Also, Centre is planning to issue the ID cards for UNLF cadre after being finalized and for regulated stay in the camps. So these are the parallel peace effort by the Ministry of Home Affairs with rest of the militant groups. So this is the practice question MCQ. Pre-movement regime, sometimes seen in the news, is a bilateral arrangement between India and which of the following countries? Please solve this MCQ. Now let's go into the next topic of the day, that is the particularly vulnerable tribal groups demand for the separate enumeration in the upcoming census. So what is the backdrop of this particular news? Ministry of Tribal Affairs has asked Registrar General of India as well as the Census Commissioner of India to enumerate particularly vulnerable tribal groups in a separately in upcoming census 2027. So what is the relevance of this particular news? GS2 welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population by the centre and states as well as the performance of these schemes. Now let's go into the detail of the news. Basically, Ministry of Tribal Affairs has asked Registrar General and Census Commissioner of India to enumerate PVTGs separately in upcoming census. And what is the objective of this particular demand? To collect the data on the households, individuals, demographic, cultural and socio-economic features of the particularly vulnerable tribal groups in India. Now let's go into certain basics part. Who are the PVTGs? That is particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So basically, earlier particularly vulnerable tribal groups were known as the primitive tribal groups. But since this nomenclature primitive tribal groups was bit derogatory, it was later revised to particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So basically, this is a kind of sub-classification of the scheduled tribes, and PVTGs refer to those tribes which are most vulnerable among the tribal groups. So there is a variations or kind of inequalities between the scheduled tribes, different tribes of the scheduled tribes also, and many of them which are very vulnerable are termed as the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So what are the criteria for the identification of the particularly vulnerable tribal groups? The first and foremost is the declining or stagnant population. So those, because of the multiple combination of the multitude of factors, these PVTGs are facing declining as well as the stagnant population, geographically isolated. So basically these PVTGs, as we know, the tribes basically prefer to live in the forest or in a hilly areas in isolated conditions away from the rest of the mainstream community. Their geographical isolation is one of the most prominent character or feature of the PVTGs. Then pre-agrarian practices, basically they are still in the, many of them are still in the hunting gathering phase, and they prefer, they practice this hunting and gathering still on a large scale. Example can be the Chenchu tribe of the Telangana, which resides in northern Telangana. Economic backwardness, since they are far away from the mainstream community, economic backwardness, extreme poverty is one of the distinguishing features of those PVTGs. Then low literacy, basically as per the Professor Virginius Zaza report by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, the literacy rate as per the 2011 census of these PVTGs is less than 32% basically. So there is a very low level of literacy in the PVTGs. So now let's have a look into how the concept of particular vulnerable tribal groups evolved in post-independence Indian context. So basically in 1960s, basically central government has appointed Devar Commission or a tribal Panchashil committee for the study of the condition of the scheduled tribes in India, and this particular committee, Devar Commission, has recommended the creation of the primitive tribal groups. Based on this, Government of India in 1975 created the group of primitive tribal groups, created the category of the primitive tribal groups, and later on this particular primitive tribal groups were renamed as a particularly vulnerable tribal groups in 2006. So let's go into the statistical aspect of this PVTG. When it comes to PVTGs, as of now in India there are total 75 PVTGs. 2006 there were 52 groups of PVTGs, which were later many of 23 added, later 23 added in PVTG category. Now let's go into the geographical spread aspect. Basically these PVTGs are spread across the 18 Indian states plus Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Now what is the necessity or what is the rationale behind this Ministry of Tribal Affairs demand for the separate enumeration? So as of now there is a these particularly vulnerable tribal groups have never been enumerated separately in any of the census. So there is no concrete data about them, their demography. They are basically counted as a part of broad scheduled tribe category. So they are not separate, they have not been separately counted so far. 40 out of the 75 PVTGs are single entry STs, means they are explicitly listed in the notified list of scheduled tribes under Article 342. Let me explain this. Basically in India, as per the 2011 census, there are 705 tribes, out of which 75 are particularly vulnerable tribal groups, but only 40 out of those 75 are included in the list of scheduled tribes. The point is that 35 means rest of the 35 particularly vulnerable tribal groups are not even included in the list of the scheduled tribes also. So this is the issue which they have been facing. And what are the example? Baigads of the Madhya Pradesh, they were separately listed as a PVTG in 2011 census, but again Abuj Maria or Hill Korbas were not included in the PVTGs or separately listed. Basically this Abuj Maria lives in the Sukma region, that is Dandakaranya region of Chhattisgarh. Hill Korbas are also the resident of the Chhattisgarh. Now let's go into the estimates of the PVTG population. So basically in 2023, when Prime Minister Modi announced PM Janman scheme, at that time the survey was conducted by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, state government, as well as the Tribal Research and Training Institute of the state government regarding the population of the PVTGs in India, which has estimated the approximate population of PVTGs in India around 47.5 lakh. And when it comes to the population, Madhya Pradesh is the state with the highest number of the PVTG population, that is the 13 lakh, Maharashtra 6.7 lakh, Andhra Pradesh 5.18 lakh. Some of the PVTG groups are extremely small. For example, there are 13 PVTG groups which are having population less than 1000. For example, the Sentinelids, North Sentinelids, 15 individuals, Jarawads, Onges, Shompens, which are having less than 1000 population. When it comes to the largest PVTG population, Baigads, which basically resides in this eastern MP, eastern part of the MP which borders with the Chhattisgarh, their population is 4.14 lakh. These Baigas are often in news with reference to their clashes with the forest officials owing to the implementation of the Forest Right Act. So basically, when it comes to the largest PVTG population, Baigas from the Madhya Pradesh are having 4.14 lakh population. Now, what are the challenges faced by the PVTG population? So basically, the first and foremost is socio-economic marginalization due to poverty and illiteracy. So since these are the most backward among the scheduled tribes, they are facing lot of socio-economic marginalization because of the poverty and illiteracy. As I have already mentioned, as per the Professor Virginia Zaza Committee report of Ministry of Tribal Affairs, the percentage of literacy among the PVTG is less than 32% as per the 2011 census, which when it comes to poverty, they are among the extreme poverty section population. Loss of land and livelihoods from the development projects and deforestation. So basically, when it comes to the involuntary displacement because of these various development project or deforestation, tribals, basically scheduled tribes constitute 10% of the population, but they are almost 40% of the people which have been displaced by these development projects. They are the victims of the involuntary displacement. Poor health outcomes from the malnutrition. Means when it comes to malnutrition related statistics, tribal districts whether across the India are the worst performance. Example can be taken from the Palghar districts of the Maharashtra, in which the issue of malnutrition or is always there, or Melghat area of the Maharashtra, in which there are the malnutrition related deaths, news frequently comes out. Poor sanitation because of the lack of basic sanitary facilities, lack of healthcare access. As I have already mentioned, they reside in the remote hilly areas, because of which they do not have adequate access to the healthcare services by the government or by the private sector also. Now, what is the policy significance of this separate enumeration of the PVTGs? Basically, this PM Janman scheme, which was launched in 2023 with approximate budget of 24,000 crore, it targets education, health, livelihood, amenities for the PVTGs across the 200 plus districts in India. So accurate enumeration of the PVTG will help to plug the gaps in the scheme implementation. This is very ambitious program. PM Janman is very ambitious program, and whatever the gaps are there in the implementation of this particular program, those will be plugged because of the exact data of the PVTG. Ensure the targeted delivery of the benefits to this PVTG, and reassess whether PVTG classification criteria remain valid. So basically, most of the criterias that based upon which these PVTGs are classified as a PVTG have been undergoing lot of change because of the tremendous load of the globalization, urbanization, privatization, and these criteria need to be assessed as per the various anthropologists or sociologists. Now, let's have a look into this PM Janman scheme. Pradhan Mantri Janajati Adivasi Nyay Maha Abhiyan. So, PM Janman scheme, what is the objective? Uplifting the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. This initiative carries potential to address the unique challenges and provide essential infrastructure for the brighter future of the PVTGs. So, what are the key focus area? Housing, water, healthcare and nutrition, education, better educational opportunities, connectivity, roads and telecommunication access. Basically, when it comes to housing, they will be provided housing under the PM Awas scheme. When it comes to clean drinking water, there will be the provision of the clean drinking water through Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, that is the Jal Jeevan Mission. Healthcare and nutrition, improving the medical facilities and nutritional support through ICDS or opening of the PHC centers in the PVTG areas. Education, better educational opportunities. For this, many tribal research institutions are supposed to be established, or Eklavya model residential skills are supposed to be established in the tribal areas. Connectivity, again roads and communication access, The classic example can be given from the Sukma area of the Chhattisgarh. Sustainable livelihood promotion, basically to promote the livelihood opportunities among the PVTGs in the manner that they are in the sync with the nature or their traditional practices. Now, what are the special initiatives that have been taken under this PM Janman scheme, Vanadhana Vikas Kendras for the forest produce trade? So, what is basically issue that there are various type of the forest produce that have been collected and collected by the these PVTGs or various tribal groups, and they that have been there is a sale by these communities to the agents, and these agents basically exploit the innocent tribals by taking these forest produce at very paltry rates. So, basically creation of this Vandhan Vikas Kendra is to have some giving some organized sector touch up to these Vanadhan Kendras or forest produce producers or collectors, so that they will get a good deal for their produce. 1 lakh household will receive off-grid solar power systems. So, why this off-grid power solar systems? Because since I have already mentioned that these tribals live in remote areas or very remote areas, because of which creation of this particular grid type of the infrastructure may not be financially adequate or technologically feasible. So, that is the reason creation of the off-grid solar system is one of the way forward. Installation of the solar street lights in PVTG areas, again to create the infrastructure. What is the expected impact of this Pradhan Mantri Janman scheme? Improving the quality of life and well-being of the PVTGs, reducing the discrimination and exclusion faced by PVTGs, and recognize and integrate their cultural and development contribution to the growth of nation. This is the practice question. Consider the following statement with reference to PM Janman scheme. Please solve this MCQ. Let us go into the next topic of the day, Immigration and Foreigners Act. So, what is the backdrop of this news? Government has notified various rules and orders under the Immigration and Foreigners Act 2025, which had came into effect on September 1. Now, what is the relevance of this particular topic? Parliament and state legislature, structure, functioning, conduct of the business, and powers and privileges. Now, let us go into the detail of the news. Basically, the Immigration and Foreigners Bill 2025 was passed by Lok Sabha on March 27 and by Rajya Sabha on April 2 and received the assent of the President on April 4. Over the last few days, government has notified various rules and orders under the Immigration and Foreigners Act 2025, which came into effect on September 1. So, what is the objective of this Foreigners Act, Immigration and Foreigners Act? To end the fragmentation of the rules, modernize the rules, reduce the ambiguity among the provisions, and digitize the enforcement of these provisions related to the Foreigners Act. So, this particular Foreigner Act came into effect on September 1, 2025, and this particular Foreigner Act has consolidated and replaced earlier four older acts. So, the first one is Passport Entry into India Act, Registration of Foreigners Act, and Immigration Carriers Liability Act. So, these four old acts have been replaced by this Immigration and Foreigners Act 2025. So, what are the provisions regarding the entry and documentation of the foreigners? What are the changes made in this as per this particular act? Valid passport and travel document and visa mandatory for foreigners unless they are exempted. So, if any foreigner has to enter India, there will be need for valid passport or travel document. There will be the mandatory visa requirement for foreigners unless they are exempted. Entry and exit allowed only via notified immigration post, whether they are, that is by airport or seaport or land or rail. So, entry to the or exit to the foreigners will be only by notified immigration post. Immigration officers will have a final authority to approve or refuse the entry or exit of the on security grounds. So, when there will be the issue of national security, the immigration officer in charge of that particular area will have a final authority whether to allow the particular foreigner entry or whether allow him to leave the country, that is exit. Now, what is the now let us go into the procedural issue. No need to remember this, I am just telling it for the clarification. Basically, Foreigners must register with the registration officer, that is those who are SP or DCP as per the local civil authority. Foreigners regional registration offices are empowered with the regional function regarding this registration as well as the oversight. Universities, hospitals, hotels, hostels, PG homes, religious institution must electronically notify authorities about the arrival, stay, treatment, birth and death of foreigners. So basically, when it comes to universities, there is a student exchange program between Indian universities and rest of the world's university. So there are many foreigners which are living, which have been studying as well as living in the foreign universities. When it comes to hospital, India is one of the prominent hub of the medical tourism, owing to the fact that the treatment prices in India are very less, even at means almost 1/10 of the United States prices, because of which it is very popular destination for the medical tourism. Hotels, hostels or PG homes, again those who are coming for these purposes. What are the rules regarding the institutional and public order controls? So basically, the accommodation providers, basically these hotels or hostels, they are supposed to report the arrivals or departures within the 24 hours of their arrival in the India. When it comes to hospital, they are supposed to report the births and deaths of the foreigners within the 7 days, and civil authorities of the area have authority to restrict or shut down the places like resort or clubs if they are linked to the undesirable foreigners or because of the security concerns. And the special permits are required for the entry into protected, restricted or prohibited area, which is to be applied by the online portals or apps. So these are the rules regarding the accommodation of the foreigners in India. Now let's go into the exempted categories. The first and foremost, the Indian military personnel on duty or families on the official passport are exempted from these rules. Citizens of Nepal and Bhutan, basically these are our closest neighbors as well as the friendly countries. With Nepal we have a friendly movement regime, free movement regime, basically open border with Nepal, and there are more than 60 lakh Nepalis which are staying and working in India, and lakhs of Nepalis on daily basis commute between India and Nepal. So for them, these are citizens of Nepal are exempted, and Bhutan, since it is one of the closest neighbor and friendly country of India, their citizens are also exempted from this kind of registration practices. Tibetan refugees, those who have entered into India between 1959 to 2003 or later through the designated post, are exempted from this kind of registration requirement. Minority refugees, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis and Christians from the Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh. So basically Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis and Christians, these are the minority community in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Bangladesh, and they have been severely suffered or systematically persecuted owing to their religious minorities status in post-independence period since 1950s, as a result of which government has brought Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, and in sync with that the provisions of that particular act, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains and Parsis protected from the prosecution if entered in India before December 31st, 2024, even without valid papers. Citizenship cutoff under the CAA remains December 31, 2014. Now, registered Sri Lankan Tamils who have sheltered in India up to January 9, 2015. So the Sri Lankan Tamil refugees are also exempted. Holders of the diplomatic and official passports, eligible foreigners for visa on arrival, and foreign military personnel on warship visiting the India for humanitarian events and exercises. Streamlining of the system with less ambiguity and faster enforcement of the rules as well as the acts related to the immigrants as well as the foreigners. Reduced court burden via compounding of offences. As we know, there are, when it comes to the Indian judiciary, more than 4.5 crore cases pending with average case time of almost 8 to 9 years. That will, the streamlining of these acts of the foreigners as well as the immigrants will lead to the reduced court burden. Stronger tracking of the foreigners through electronic reporting, as we have mentioned here. Clear uniform rules for the special categories like Tibetan, Sri Lankan Tamils, religious minority refugees from Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Pakistan. So there are clear and uniform rules for the minorities which have been persecuted in our neighboring countries. Now let's go into the practice question. Immigration and Foreigners Act replaced with which of the following legislations? Please solve this MCQ. Now let's go into the next topic of the day, that is the antibiotics and mental health in India. What is their correlation? So what is the backdrop of this particular news? What is the backdrop of this particular news? As mental health awareness gains momentum in India, a surreptitious menace is insidiously undermining this edifice of progress, that is the unbridled use of antibiotics. And what is the relevance of this particular news? GS2, issues relating to the development and management of social sector including the healthcare. Now let's go into the detail of the news. So basically, in recent times, a nascent research suggests the disturbances or perturbations in the gut microbiota frequently precipitated with overzealous antibiotic consumption can significantly contribute to the anxiety, depression and cognitive degeneration. So here the author want to suggest that the overzealous antibiotic consumption leads to the disturbances in the gut microbiota, which ultimately causes anxiety, depression as well as the cognitive degeneration in the patient. While the threat of the antimicrobial resistance is ubiquitously acknowledged as a formidable public health hazard in case of India, its profound implications on the mental well-being remains under-examined, or there is a further scope of research. So what here means, what author here want to say that the antimicrobial resistance, when it comes to India, it is a very common or very severe public health emergency or hazard, but its implication have not been adequately studied in case of Indian populations. Now, what is the correlation between the antibiotic and mental health, which is the core theme of this particular article? Mental health awareness is rising in India, but irrational antibiotics use threatens this progress. So basically, when it comes to the mental health awareness, India has been witnessing growing awareness among the urban as well as the rural population about this mental health issue. Earlier, any mental health issue was considered as a stigma, but now either because of the increase in the spread of the awareness, or because many celebrities are coming out to say that they have also faced depression, the awareness about the mental health consciousness has been continuously increasing. Also, there last year there was one survey by the NIMHANS, that is National Institute for Mental Health and Allied Sciences, Bangalore, which is also called as the aims of the psychiatry or psychology, says that they almost 27 crore population in India has been facing some or other kind of the mental health issue. So because of combination of these factors, there has been an increasing awareness about the mental health necessity in India. But at the same time, author here wants to suggest that the irrational and irresponsible consumption of the antibiotics leading to the derailing of this particular effect or mental health awareness. So beyond the antimicrobial resistance, antibiotics disrupt the gut-brain axis, a key channel linking the gut microbiota and brain. So basically, this gut-brain axis refers to the bidirectional communication system between our gut and brain, which try to communicate the things between these two different physiological systems. And gut dysbiosis basically refers to the imbalance of the gut bacteria is linked to the frequent attacks of anxiety, depression and cognitive decline and various neurodegenerative disorder. Neurodegenerative means what? These nerves, which whether these are peripheral nerves or the central nerves, they show the degeneration in their structure as well as the functional abilities. It refers to the neurodegenerative disorders. Again, Parkinson disease can be taken as an example. What are the health implication of dysbiosis? It basically, this gut dysbiosis is having severe health implications and it is linked to the inflammation driven depression. So ultimately, this gut dysbiosis leads to depression. Again, altered gut metabolites and after affect the brain gene expression, neuroplasticity and stress response. So basically, this particular gut dysbiosis is a result of disturbances in the gut microflora system, which because of which there is a alteration or disturbances in the gut metabolism. So whatever the digestive system metabolism has been there, that get affected or disturbed by the this gut dysbiosis, which ultimately affect the brain's gene expression or neuroplasticity and stress response. So basically neuroplasticity refers to the ability of the human brain to show resilience when it undergoes any kind of stress. For example, post traumatic stress disorder is there. Means basically the population which is living in the border areas or LOC areas, they have to face this kind of violence or shelling between the Indian and Pakistan armies many times, which leads to the post traumatic stress disorder. So basically when if they are having neuroplasticity, they will be able to recover themselves to the normal functioning in case of peacetime. Now expands the understanding of the mental illness from being purely brain based to the systemic dysfunction involving the gut. So here author want to suggest that if there is any kind of mental illness, it is not purely brain based or brain based confinement, but it is a systematic dysfunction which can also involve gut, resulting into the dysfunctioning of the gut. Now let us go into this particular antibiotic misuse in India. What is the extent or what is the severity of the antibiotic misuse in India? So basically India is one among the highest global consumer of the antibiotics. What are the causes or drivers of this irrational or excessive consumption of the antibiotics in case of India? Over the counter availability. So basically almost 80 to 90% antibiotics which are available in India or which are commonly used, they are available over the counter, means without any kind of doctor's prescription they are being given. Self medication means the people do not prefer to go to doctor, they self medicate themselves without consulting doctor. They take either wrong antibiotic, or they either take it in a wrong amount, or they do not complete the prescribed dose of the antibiotic. Because of all these things lead to the antibiotic misuse. Low awareness means what are the uses as well as the likely implications or side effects of the antibiotics. There has been little or no awareness among the common populace, which is leading to the antibiotic misuse. And weak regulation authority. So basically whatever our drug regulatory authorities are there, there is very weak enforcement mechanism, whether any medical store has been giving or selling these antibiotics with or without prescription. There is no any counter mechanism to check. Now as per the Institute of Health Metric Evaluation, in 2021 2.67 lakhs deaths in India were because of the antimicrobial resistance, and India is projected to have 1.2 million deaths by 2030 because of this antimicrobial resistance. So this is a huge public medical emergency. Also there was a study conducted by the prestigious journal Lancet in India. 50% of the antibiotics consumed in India are unapproved formulations. So whatever the almost 50% antibiotics that are being consumed by the or prescribed by the doctors or consumed by the patients, these are unapproved. Unapproved means whatever the content of that particular antibiotic is there, or whatever the combination between the different antibiotic is there, that has been not approved by the Food and Drug Administration. So these are, in a way, these are sold illegally. So what are the likely solution for this crisis? Emerging solutions. The first and foremost, that is the psychobiotics, that is the use of probiotics and prebiotics, which shows the promise in reducing the depressive systems. So prebiotics, again meta-analysis by Frontiers in Psychiatry, this is one of the journal, Frontiers in Psychiatry. It shows that probiotics can significantly reduce the depression from mild to moderate cases. Then traditional Indian foods like curd, idli, soda, pickles can act as a natural probiotics that support the microbial resilience of the digestive system. Now what are the challenges when it comes to tackling the antimicrobial resistance and its ill effects in case of India? The first and foremost is the low public awareness about the gut-brain axis and risk of the antibiotic misuse. So as I have already mentioned, common people do not have adequate information regarding the use, misuse, good effects or side effects of the antibiotics, as a result of which they have been mindlessly consumed, leading to the multiple ill effects of the antibiotics. Cultural preferences for quick fix medicines over the lifestyle or dietary solutions. Again, everybody wants quick solution to their disease or their pain, because of which they prefer the quick fix medicines rather than addressing the root cause. and this become the cultural preference. Economic incentives drive over prescription by doctors and unregulated sales by the pharmacies. So basically, doctors which are indulging in the unethical practices over prescribe the antibiotics. Over prescribing means what? Suppose any patient is not requiring any kind of antibiotic dose, still they are being given, or if any patient is requiring low dose of antibiotic, they are being given in the high dose, because of which there will be the high sales. This is kind of unethical practices in the medical field, which is very common nowadays. Weak regulatory enforcement in rural and semi-urban areas worsens the misuse. So basically, when it comes to the regulatory enforce regarding the use of prescription or use of antibiotics, there is a little or no any kind of enforcement, and this particular rural or semi-urban areas are do not having adequate number of the doctors, as a result of which there is a weak regulatory enforcement. Now, what are the policy or public health interventions needed in case of India? Public health campaigns via National Health Mission or Ayushman Bharat to promote the gut brain literacy. Regulatory reforms, again CDSCO to strictly enforce the prescription only antibiotic access. Again, this Central Drug Standard Control Organization can do more to enforce the prescription only antibiotics. Penalize the non-compliance in pharmacies. Surveillance expansion to include the mental health correlation effect of the antibiotics. Investment in the Indian microbiome research for context specific therapies. So basically, whatever the research in the context of antibiotics, most of the antibiotics today that have been developed in the Western countries, and those antibiotics have developed on the in the population of the Western countries or European countries. Although there are clinical trials being done in the Indian population also, there is no adequate research on the Indian microbiome that is present in the guts of the Indian population. So there is need for the investment in such research by the ICMR or like organization. Clinical and systemic reforms needed. Embedding antibiotic stewardship in medical training. It means that when there is a medical education or medical training is given, there should be the focus on the antibiotic stewardness, means awareness regarding the use and misuse of the antibiotic. Psychiatric evaluation include the gut health assessment. So if there is any patient showing the psychiatric symptoms like anxiety and depression, there should be the gut health assessment of that particular patient to establish the correlation and further studies. Nutrition and diet counseling must be integrated into mental health care. So when it comes to if any patient is showing any kind of mental health related issues and there is any kind of treatment going on, that particular treatment should also include the nutritional related aspect as well as the diet counseling, so that the gut microflora is to be improved. Encourage the interdisciplinary collaboration between psychiatry, gastroenterology, nutrition and public health. So these are the various branches of the medical field, and there should be the collaborative research to establish the adequate link to further the research in case of gut microbiome study and their correlation with the psychiatry. So what is the conclusion? Antibiotic misuse undermines not just the public health via AMR but also damaging the mental health via gut dysbiosis. India must safeguard its microbial diversity and curbing the irrational antibiotic use and embracing the integrative care. The gut-brain axis should be central to the future mental health policy and strategy in context of India. So now let's go into the important initiatives to tackle the AMR in India. National Action Plan for the Antimicrobial Research, which include the One Health approach, that is integration of human, animal, agriculture and environment while considering any disease. Expansion of the surveillance network like surveillance and research network. Regulation of antimicrobials through red line campaign or schedule H1 drug campaign. Ban on the colistin, which is the third line antibiotic. Antibiotic stewardship program to be included in the medical education. This is the practice question. Please solve this MCQ. Now let's go into the next topic of the day, the decoded topic, the teacher in a changing world. So what is the backdrop of this particular news? On September 5th each year, the nation observes the Teachers' Day, the birth anniversary of the great philosopher and former President of India, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. What is the relevance? Basically, GS2 issues relating to the development and management of the social sector and services including the health, education and human resources. Now let us go into the detail of the news. Basically, recently while addressing the nation from the ramparts of the Red Fort, the Prime Minister gave the clarion call for Swadeshi and Atmanirbharta to build the Samruddha Bharat by 2047. So basically, India's journey towards the self-reliance and development is an ambitious national endeavor, and with the National Education Policy 2020 at its core. So basically, this particular National Education Policy designates teacher as a transformers who will shape the future generations into responsible, skilled and well-rounded citizens. So this is the detailed context of the news which have been initiated by Honorable Prime Minister in his speech on the Independence Day. Teachers as a nation builder. So here author who is nothing but the Union Education Minister says that education is seen as the bedrock of the national progress, and teachers as ambassadors of the national progress ignite the curiosity, shape character and instill the lifelong values among the student. Also, Prime Minister in his speech emphasized parents give birth but Guru gives life to any person. Now let us go into the role of the teacher in the National Education Policy 2020. So basically, National Education Policy designates teacher as a transformer for the future generation, and this particular National Education Policy has decided to shift the focus from rote learning to the student centric and holistic education, which includes the social, emotional, cognitive and physical development aspect. So education will not be a mere rote learning including books and notebooks, but it will be a student centric holistic education activity including social, emotional, cognitive and physical development aspect. Now what is the teacher's central role in the National Education Policy, New Education Policy 2020? The first and foremost, elevated role for the teacher as a mentor, facilitators, innovators, leaders shaping the students and society. Holistic development. So basically, there will be focus on critical thinking, problem solving, creativity and social emotional growth of the learners. So critical thinking means ability to criticize or evaluate anything in objective manners without any kind of prejudices or cognitive biases or emotional prejudices. Problem solving approach, as we know, the ASER survey, so such kind of problem solving approach has to be developed in the students. Continuous professional development. So basically, the teacher, there should be a continuous professional development so that they gets adapted to the newer methods of the pedagogy, and for this there will be the 50 hours of the annual training to update the pedagogy, technology use and subject expertise among the teacher. Teacher education and recruitment. Now there will be a as of now, the B.Ed program, that is the Bachelor of Education program, is 2 year, but by 2030 this is likely to expand to the 4 year, and recruitment to be strengthened and made transparent. So there will be a transparent and strengthening of the recruitment system, teachers recruitment system. What is the curriculum and standards? Basically, there will be the national curriculum framework for the teacher education and national professional standards for the teacher. So basically, there will be a holistic curriculum framework for the teacher's education also. Autonomy and flexibility, there will be the greater freedom in the pedagogy and teaching methods tailored to the student needs. Supportive environment, basically teacher communities within the school complex for collaboration, reducing isolation and sharing practices. So basically, if there is any large school, there will be a kind of different teacher communities who will collaborate each other, or different schools will collaborate each other for the sharing good practices with each other, so that there will be no any kind of isolation and flow of ideas between the different schools or teachers. Recognition of the innovation, innovative teaching methods to be identified, documented and promoted as a best practice. Example can be given of Ranjit Singh Desle, the teacher from Solapur district of Maharashtra, who has won the Global Teacher Award by the United Nations and World Bank for his employing the innovative or technological means for the promotion of the technology based education in Solapur. Now, what are the educational frameworks and policies? Basically, this national curriculum framework for school education It includes flexible learning, multidisciplinary and multilingual education, use of technology and respect for diversity. So, flexible learning means as per the need as well as the strength and assessment of the students' requirements. Multidisciplinary and multilingual education, again multilingual education for the cognitive development of the students, emotional quotient of the student, use of technology. Again, this part needs to be improved. The reason being, only 25 to percent school in Bihar are having computer based classrooms, whereas in case of national average it is around 55 to 56%. Integrated teacher education program for the multidisciplinary training for the future teachers. Now, what are the government initiatives for the teacher capacity building? Continuous professional development of the new pedagogies like experimental aspect, arts integrated aspect or sports integrated aspect for the competency based training. So, what are the different programs basically? NISTHA, National Initiative for School Heads and Teachers Holistic Advancement. Diets of excellence, basically these are nothing but the model centers for the research, training and innovation of the teachers education or teachers training. Promotion of technology in education, for this teachers adapting to the digital as well as the blended learning, and for this various platforms have been initiated by the government like PM E-Vidya Diksha Swayam. AI enabled personalized assessment and data driven insights for the support of the teacher. Thus, technology will enhance the teaching abilities of the teachers, not replace them. Now, let us have a look into the teachers workforce statistics. India has the largest teaching workforce in the world with 1.16 crore school across the school as well as the higher education, and thus under the new education policy 2020 they are considered as the critical national asset. Now, at last, here Minister of Education highlights the role of teacher as a architects of Atmanirbhar Bharat. They will be treated as a job creators, innovators or leaders, and which will be having responsibility for instilling the ethics, resilience and service to the society among the students, and every classroom become the laboratory for the self-reliant India to convert it into the Vikasit Bharat by 2047. Now, teachers, when it comes to conclusion, teachers are the soul of India's education system, central to the NEP 2020 reforms, pivotal in shaping the Atmanirbhar Bharat through innovation, inclusivity and value-based holistic education. So, this is, let's go into the practice question. The National Education Policy 2020 emphasizes teacher as a transformers. In this context, evaluate the challenges and opportunities in empowering the India's teaching workforce for holistic and inclusive education. This is all for the day. Thank you.